Recording in progress. All right.
Okay, got it.
Got it. Anyway, how is everyone?
Hi, how are you guys?
All right. Yeah, we've got some people here too, so we need to make sure. So Eric, you get to hold this. The power button is that top slidey one. So, all right. So here we are. It's an exciting morning because we're actually going to get to the first line of our poem of the Lord's Prayer today. And hopefully what we'll do is get through the whole line. I know, right? Like, Our Father who art in heaven, that's not a lot of words, but we could do a lot in regards to examining our Father. So if we don't, I told Cynthia she wanted to know where we would be by the time she got back. And I said, maybe on line 2, but no promises. You might still be on line 1. So I want to make sure to take time and to field questions and really get at some of the nitty-gritty, nuancy type things in regards to the language. Okay, I don't want you to I don't want to like zip through it, because really those first couple of words kind of set up everything in regards to the flow of the prayer. The word our, and then Father, and then all that, what that all encompasses. So anyway, let's just do a recap over the past couple of times, just so that we can kind of make space here. And I always think that it's good to revisit what we have been talking about, because our memories are plagued with so much right now. And so anyway, so we did the introductory session, which was just sort of talking about all the fun aspects of the poem and some context and some, our first initial reactions. Remember, we had this thing going on. And we found that the prayer is one that most of us know in and out of the church. It's one of the prayers that lasts the longest in regards to long-term memory, even with early onset and more advanced forms of dementia. People will still remember this poem because it's ingrained so deeply. And we also realize too that not only is it traditional, but it often has a good feel. Many of us like it. Even if we have an issue with the Father component, the rest of it is really comforting, and some fun stuff like that. Then last week, what we did is we jumped more into the context of where we find this poem, specifically in the Gospel of Matthew that we took it from. And we spoke about its contextual location and why that was important. And really that if finding this poem in the middle of the Sermon on the Mount isn't just something to skip over real fast, but is centrally located and important to notice. Because we talked about that thing called a chiastic structure, right? So like if you're looking at themes of a certain portion of text and you notice that there's this thing here and then this thing down here and then this thing here and then this thing here, and you start to see a theme that kind of looks like this greater than sign, okay? And then this thing becomes the most important, okay? And this point where it's just one thing, that's where we find our Lord's Prayer. Okay, so we have to anchor it in. This is something we talked about last week. We have to anchor the Lord's Prayer into the idea that it is about the merger of our spiritual and physical life. Okay, we don't just pray this independently, individually, autonomously, in some sort of like ethereal realm of the cosmos, disconnected from our material realm. But we actually, because it's about the Sermon on the Mount, because it's in that, we have to see it as ethical and practical. Okay, it's about our actions as well. And so the act of praying such a short, quick prayer with this specific language, both familiar and unfamiliar to the audience at the time, it's about us in the world in relationship with God and relationship with others. So that mirroring of the 2 great commandments, okay, is manifest even in this prayer. So anyway, so we kind of did those couple of things over the past couple of weeks. Are there any questions from what we've done or discussed, or any insights that you had over the past week? No? No? Okay. Well, I'm fine with that, but feel free to have insights over the week and then write them down and we can share them here. Okay? And so that way we can really, because it should be fun. I'm hoping, sort of, part of me hopes that as we study these words, that as you go about your week, you'll be reminded of something, or you'll see something differently, or all of a sudden you'll say, oh, this came to me and now I want to share it with the group because it made me think of what we just talked about. So I definitely want to see some of those things. What I'm also going to do is I'm going to minimize this. Just checking my class structure outline. I have 2 separate outlines. Are any of you surprised? No, you are not surprised that I have so many outlines. All right, so I did that. Now I want to pull up. Okay, and now I'm gonna minimize this one. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm gonna have Daniel put up the slideshow presentation. Yay, look at my big fancy screen title. Okay, they don't see it, it's coming. You see it?
Hey,
Hey, I did put together a PowerPoint presentation. I am a good teacher, I can do it. We have to find our encouragement where we can find it. Liza's clapping for me, by the way, if you couldn't see it. But anyway, also too, look, ready? Can you guys see that on your screen?
yeah,
Yeah, you can see our green dot. They can't see green dot? Not even from the... Okay, but I wasn't sure if maybe they could see it from the camera. Okay. Okay, all right. Well, anyway, the people here get laser pointer. Yay, see, laser pointer. Ah, oh, look, I'm Iron Man. Woo. Just kidding. Okay, sorry. None of you found that as funny as I did. All right, so the education series, Lord's Prayer, detailed look into this rather simple poem, right? And that's the thing I keep stressing, is that it is a poem. In the Greek, it rhymes. Daniel, can you advance past the title page? Okay, this is what we talked about last week, okay? It's more than just a collection of words. This prayer is a concern for authenticity. It's the heart of the Sermon on the Mount, and it highlights Jesus's piety and thus our piety, okay? And so we, like, what we say does mirror what's kind of going on the inside a little bit, okay? We can use our words to cloak it, but if we're being authentic and we're speaking from the heart, that's why we sometimes get scared to do some public speaking without having like some form of manuscript, because what if I say that thing that I'm thinking? But anyway, prayer is a really intimate part of us. It might be why we are nervous to pray spontaneously and publicly with other people, because we don't want to be judged for our words. Jesus has been kind enough to give us a really good, solid prayer that we can say publicly and together. But it does reflect Jesus's piety. What was important to him? Well, look at the Lord's Prayer. What did he tell us to pray? And so there you see that simplicity of entreaty and request and the communality of prayer life for Jesus. Those things are essential. Okay, we're not praying alone. So advance it forward one more. All right, this slide is always present for anyone. And so we have our alpha and beta, gamma, delta, epsilon, zeta. We will always have this slide available. And I did forget to email my Zoom people a PDF version. So I will go ahead and do that, okay? Someone remind me, holler at me. All right, advance it one more. Okay. Those in person, it might be small, but I chose to make it small because what I really wanted to do was I really wanted to highlight the poems side by side in Greek and in English, okay? And so if So we all know the one on the right, but let me read the one on the left, okay? And listen to the cadence of the maybe not necessarily like the lyrics, okay? So pater hemon ha intois oranois, hagias theto ta anamasu, eltheto he basileasu, genetheto ta thelemasu, hos in orano kai epiges, tan artan hemon, tan epiusion das hemin semeron, kai athes hemin ta aphalemata hemon, hos kai hemes aphakemen tois aphaletais hemon, kai me esenenkes hemas ais perasman, ala rusai hemas, apotu poniru. Okay, you hear the poetic nature of it? It's kind of really fun, and this is why it's kind of got like a Dr. Seuss feel, okay? And this is why the kids loved it. All right, there were so many like rhyming words that didn't make sense to them, but they got wrapped up in that rhyming sequence of words of a different language. But anyway, so those are the two side by side. Can you advance it again? Thanks. Here it is big. All right, and all of these words mean something. Even this little ha right there in the middle of that first line, ha en, ha, that means something. This word is as or hos, and that is also important because that word right there, as in heaven and upon earth, okay, this as means something. All right. Kai athes hemin ta aflemata hemon. Grant us forgiveness of our sins as, here's another host. There's a space missing, but there's another as. And as we forgive others. All right. These things are important. So anyway, there's the poem in its entirety. Zoom people, would you like to have the side-by-side version or just the Greek version?
The Greek version for me.
Okay. All right, because I can group that in with the email with the Greek letters. Okay, and then you can come back to this and you can mark it, you can print it out, you can mark it up, and you can make it your own. Okay, can you advance it again? Here we are. Finally, pater hemon ha intois oranois. All right, I love that ois. Okay, what do I say? Ta hagia tois hagiois. Okay, this OIS is a dative plural ending of a noun, and it's usually 2 or 4 people. Okay, well, that's what hagios is, holy people. That's why I translate it right afterwards. I do the ta hagia tois hagiois, holy things, because it's a neuter plural nominative, ta hagia tois hagiois, 2 and 4 holy people. All right, so these endings, the ois is here, mean something. That n is a preposition. This whole thing is a prepositional phrase. Okay, in the heavens. Okay, and then we have father, the subject, pater, hemon. This is a genitive of possession, but it's a really loose one because we do not possess God. Okay, and that's a relative article. Relating, that's a nominative, relative article relating back to the pater, our father, who in the heavens. Who, yes, Linda.
You read that first word backwards? Because if I'm trying to translate it into letters that I understand, if I read it back,
no.
I have a much better chance of seeing.
Go back, Linda, hold on. Go back to this. Can you page back to the letters? Thank you. Okay. R looks like P, but that's rho. P is this pi symbol. If you're familiar with math, 3.14 something, something, something.
Yeah, if you don't note that and you just read it backwards, it's a lot closer to pater than reading it forwards.
Except for the E and the A, the alpha and the epsilon. It would be petar.
Yeah, I'm accepting that it's not. I'm just saying that's what it looked like.
Yeah. So here's the, it would be pi or P. You can say PI is P in the language. PI alpha, pa. So remember the alpha in Greek is that long A, father. Okay, so and then the tau, which makes sense because that's just the T. Okay, and then we go over here to the epsilon, that's the and then the R or the rho, R, so pater. So it's gonna have those, now can you advance it forward? Ready? P-A-T-E-R or P alpha tau epsilon rho. Okay, and so that's where we get pater. But thank you for pointing out for reminding me, because this looks normal.
Thought maybe we were in Hebrew or something.
Yeah, no, Hebrew is even harder to look at because it's a little bit more geometric shapes with dots and symbols indicating where vowels would be sounded.
Okay, I believe you.
Yeah, this is actually way more clear. Anyway, I do like to chuckle because you know how people say it's Greek to me? I can't say that because I'm like, well, that just makes sense. Anyway, so we have all these fun words in this one line, all right? So what I want to do is I'm not going to start with that very first word, pater. I'm going to start with the second word, hemon, okay? And what I want to do with this hemon right here, so that's an eta, a mu, an omega, and a nu, okay? So that's where I get hemon. Okay, so this letter right here, this eta with that little mark above it is called a rough breathing mark. That tells me it's not amon, it's hemon. It's where the H sound kind of comes in with that sound. And so same thing too with this omicron with that little mark, it's not gonna be it's gonna be ha. Pater hemon ha intois oranois. So whenever you see, so with this line where you see this little mark that looks like an inverted single quotation mark, okay, like this, that's where you're gonna get that harder kind of back of the throat sound, that ha, okay? And depending on what vowel it's attached to, it'd be ha, he, hey. Okay, and it does actually sound different when you get used to it. Anyway, this hemon, that eta with the rough breathing mark, the mu, which does look like a scripted M, and then the omega, and then the nu, that is a pronoun, okay, a personal pronoun, all right? And principally, it's our, okay? The reason why I know that it's plural, so this is a first person plural genitive pronoun, okay? Meaning it's not my Father who is in heaven, because that would read very differently, okay? It's our, hemon, our Father, and it's in the genitive, so what it's doing is it's locating the subject within a realm that is of us, okay? So you could say, Father of us, who in the heavens, okay? Anyone here notice that there's no verb? There's no verb, there's not even a verb in the, well, there is kind of a verb in the next one, but there's no verb. But when you do poetry, you know that you can be creative with the language, right? So we know that that ha, and then the N of the dative of the, of this, prepositional phrase, I was gonna say paraphrastic, but that is altogether something else. This prepositional phrase, the verb is implied. Who is in heaven, okay? And so we just kind of stick it in there as we're translating it. You'll notice that the English is our Father who art in heaven, who is in heaven, okay? But in Greek, if you're just gonna group up these couple of words right here, we know that the verb is implied, and it's gonna be I me, which is the verb of to be. It's gonna be some form of I me, specifically third singular, okay, because it's gonna be related to the pater who is in heaven, Father who is in heaven, all right? But for rhyming sequence and comfort and ease, we have the verb is dropped, okay? If we're saying God in heaven, we know the is implied, all right? Okay, so looking at pater hemon, what are your initial reactions to this first structure, this first nominative or even like the vocative, if you know Latin. Anyone here know Latin? Not really? A little bit? Yeah, it feels like that to me too. Yeah, it's a Latin language. One of the things about that nominative case, which is always the subject case, okay, it's also can be the vocative or the thing that is called, the vocare, right, from Latin, meaning calling out. So if we're addressing God here, it's not just the subject of the sentence, but also the one to whom we are speaking. Okay, so God of us, who in the heavens. All right, and so we understand this. But what are your reactions? I'd love to hear reactions to the idea of starting this poem out with this pater, like the address. Any reactions to that? And you guys have the microphone if you want it. Any negative reactions or any? Okay, Linda, just go ahead and talk.
It's just a tiny linguistic reaction whenever I read things in other languages, because the sentence order is different from the way we order our sentences in English.
Yeah.
It always makes me think a lot.
Yeah.
Which I like.
Yeah. Yeah.
It feels like I'm entering into somebody else's thought patterns. Which is
Yes.
kind of special.
Yeah. 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 Anything else? My daughter is speaking for the crowd. I love the idea of, I don't think we realize, we probably use the vocative way more than we realize. Daniel, can you make sure not to advance the slide any further? Thank you. Right? Like I used Daniel first in that sentence because I was speaking to him. And so when this prayer opens up with pater, you're already locating yourself in a posture in relationship to the recipient, Father. Okay? So opening it up with this address is an intimate thing that you get to speak to God in this way. Okay? And then the further kind of modifying aspect, I almost got you guys with the green laser because it was pointing this way. This Haimon, this hour, is then like the Father of us. Father of us, hear our prayer. Okay? And so even when you, the neat thing about this poem is even when you pray it alone, that Haimon still exists. Okay? That still, that hour still is present, even when we're speaking it alone, even when we're addressing God on our own through this line, we're saying the Father of us. And that of us becomes really big and really global potentially. Okay? I just want to pop over to I'm kind of like winging it right now. Hold on a second. Not really winging it. I'm kind of having fun. So we have this plurality in unity when we look at that hour, that Haimon. So pater Haimon, there's this entity outside of us that we're addressing in this familiar way. And it's not just for me, meaning I can't now run away with God. I am praying in a corporate sense individually. So you have this plurality in unity. We are community praying one prayer. Okay, and not praying a bunch of individual prayers. It's not me and mine and you and yours, but our and ours. Okay, it's corporate rather than autonomous, and it's communal and global. Okay, because we don't clarify specifically what hour we're talking about. You notice there's no like Father of us who obey the law. It's not, the hour isn't, God is. Pater is qualified for sure, but the hour isn't. And so that hour becomes so big and so beautiful that we can, with this simple sentence, be praying with and for others. Okay, so I'm sorry, my thing jumped forward and now I'm just rolling slowly. All right. So, as I said, the genitive of possession, that hemon, this is God, our parent, our father, our ancestor, our elder. And these are all valid definitions for pater. Yes, Eric.
Yeah. Isn't this the only place in Scripture where Jesus addresses the Holy One as our Father?
I think in Matthew's gospel, but I do know that he says Father a couple of other times.
He says Father
But
frequently.
it's
It's
Yeah.
Abba, but never our Father.
Yeah, I think you might be right. This is one of the things that would have been so shocking because of how Jesus was saying this to the crowd of people. And that's the thing, is that the shock wouldn't have been necessarily all the contents of the poem, but this familiar, intimate hour. Anyone could say this. Okay, when you pray, pray like this. Yeah, yep. Yes, an unqualified hour for sure. And so again, branching it out, it's not just those who are in the temple or those who are law abiding or even those here, it's our Father, full stop. Well, not really full stop. There's no period there, but anyway, it's not qualified, all right? So when we say our Father, remember that word has connotations that are bigger than just father. Historically, the church has really made it rigid that it had to be father. But that word pater, when you look up in a Greek dictionary, it can be ancestor. It can be elder. It can be parent, because we do know that historically masculine nouns have been used to kind of represent the full parenting, like mother and father, right? Like, hey, you guys, right? There are only 2 guys in this room, but if I said, hey, you guys, you would all respond, right? Because sometimes the masculine noun has been used in a patriarchal society, for sure, has been used to sort of qualify the whole entire group. We do the same thing in Spanish, right? Ellos. When it's a group, even if there's one guy present, you wouldn't say ellas, you would say ellos. All right, so yes, that is problematic, and our language does need to change. But it can be a synecdoche for synecdoche, I think is actually how you say it, for the parenting unit. So you could say our parent who is in heaven. Okay, you could even, because of that idea of ancestor, elder, and parent, if you wanted to, if it brought you comfort, you could say our mother who is in heaven. It's just a word and it's just a symbol. Okay, and so that gets me into another thing that we really need to talk about as we're examining what's going on with our Father, okay, the Father of us. Okay, in the First Testament, God describes God's self as I am that I am, and not Father. Exodus is one of the first books where we get God defining God's self. And how does God do it? Yeah, I am who I am. God does not say, I am the Father. No, when Moses asked him, who sent me? Who do I say sent me? God's response is blessedly, paradoxically ambiguous. I am who I am, okay? And so when we look at how God is first recorded as defining God's self, to then turn around and say God is solely Father becomes exceptionally problematic, because when God had an opportunity to speak on God's behalf, God said something weird and not something clear. All right, I am that I am. I am who I am. All right. One of the problems over time, and I'm going to quote a feminist theologian, Mary Daly. She said, if God is male, then male is God. And that has become problematic. And you can see that historically through the restriction of ordination to just men, because they best represented Jesus and they best represented God. And so it falls into an idolatry of masculinity, which then puts men in a really difficult spot. Okay, it's not as liberating as it sounds. It's not liberating for women, and it's certainly not liberating for men to have the masculine idolaterized and worshipped. Okay, if God has to be father, then that means that God is male, and if God is male, then male is God. Okay, and then everyone else who doesn't fit into that mold falls into a subsidiary position. Okay, it's male idolatry creates a further suppression of women. And if a further suppression of women, then again, any other group that doesn't fit that mold. Okay. Pastorally, it fails as well. Why would it pastorally fail to restrict God to this one symbolic part? Hold on. Marty's gonna talk.
Pastorally, it would restrict because not everyone has a good relationship with their
Precisely.
father.
Yep.
Some of those relationships are downright unhealthy
Absolutely.
and dangerous.
Yep.
And that's not pastoral.
Yeah. Yeah. And the response to that often is sort of like in evangelical circles, well, but God is your good father. And so, and I'm not above redeeming the idea of a bad earthly relationship with one's material biological father. But I'm not so strict on God having to be father that I now have to do weird emotional mental gymnastics to like enforce that God is father. If that image is violent to you, drop it. God would rather have you talking to God in whatever means than not doing it because you feel that you have to refer to God in this one very small symbol.
But
Marty again.
In addition to that image not always being positive, if you have a completely negative, hurtful, harmful image of father, even using that word can bring that up.
Absolutely, 100%.
So just saying, well, God is the good father, you have
I
no
know.
concept of what a good father is.
Yes, it is. You're speaking from yes, not you, Marty, but when one says that, they're speaking from a position of privilege, okay? Because wounds go deep, and especially wounds from human beings that we trusted to bring us into this world and to nurture us and to care for us. And when they fail to do so, or even add threat and violence to us, it is very, very difficult to just be like, oh, okay, great. This thing that I can't even see is supposed to be the good father. And the one that I could see was a miserable, violent human being. So now I'm supposed to do this weird thing in my head where I have, cognitive dissonance or whatever. So I say, if the language is problematic, find another word. Find another intimate, personal, relational word that resonates with you, that brings you comfort. So that when you address pater or whatever it is, mater, okay? And that is the feminine, the mom is mater. Find a word that you can address through, okay? I am who I am. I am what I am. I am that I am. Did not limit their being to one symbol of father, okay? So you can find a word that fits to address. Okay, yes.
So Jesus didn't actually speak Greek. What's it look like in Aramaic?
I've got it. I'm on my way there. I'm on my way there. Okay, so when we look at metaphors for father, it's limiting to God if God has to be father. It's a very limited perspective. Okay. When we allow other symbols and metaphors to come in and speak of God, and by the way, the Bible is replete, okay, filled to the brim of God as different images. My favorite being a chicken, a mother hen. I'm like, yes, what a great image. Our God is a strong rock. Our God is a fortress. Our God is a lion. Our God is a mother hen. Our God is, the wind in the air. Our God, all that poetic language is symbolically used to metaphorically speak of God because God is so big that we cannot. Our language fails. And maybe that's okay for our language to fail. And maybe we need to lump in a bunch of symbolic language to get at the heart of who God is. Yes. So when we look at broadening the imagery for God, we will also find that we broaden the realm that those feel included in God. If we say God is just Father, then we have to say with Mary Daly, if God is male, then male is God, and then that drops all those other groups out. But if we start broadening this perspective, the metaphor for God, then we start to see other people groups brought in. It's why I love using the third person plural to speak of God if I'm going to use a pronoun, because it allows for so much broadness and bigness for other people to see themselves embedded in there. So the more terms we use to speak about God, the more people will see themselves in God and imaged in God and God's image in themselves, as well as the creation and the cosmos, and out you go. Okay? So the bigger metaphors we can use, the bigger picture of God. So now moving into what I want to do is, there's a really great need for more of a mystical approach to our relationship with God. So if you're familiar with Julian of Norwich, okay, she is absolutely brilliant, and I've learned through a friend who recently just got her doctorate in the mystics. Specifically Julian of Norwich, and then relating them to the Black female preachers of the 19th century. And that mystical demand for oppressed groups to find relationship with God outside of formal Orthodox theology and church worship, okay? Because it was supposed to be done a very specific way through a very specific channel. And God communes with humans, okay? This is special. This moment is special on Sundays. I'm pointing at the table and the aisle. Everything we do, everything that Terry's wearing right now, it's all very, very special, but it's not the only means by which God communes with God's people. And so mysticism is a vital component of Christianity and all other religions that brings God and the person into real strong communion, okay? And mysticism loves using the language of like mother and wanting, and it's got a beautiful erotic and like kind of sexual feel to it, like I'm becoming one with God and I'm merging with God, and it's got a strong kind of feminine quality to it, not so much rigid masculine dogmatic theology, but a little bit more experiential and like on the ground and in the person, okay? And so allowing mysticism to start to inform our worship and prayer and our relationship with God actually does a lot to help with seeing our connectedness, not only with the divine and not only with each other present in this location, but actually into the broader world. Think about that mushroom community that lives under the ground that helps the trees to communicate, right? The mycelium network, is that what it is? Yeah, we are connected as well, specifically those of us who adhere to a high doctrine of the Holy Spirit, okay? So thinking about all that connectivity, all that right? So our Father, all right? When we look at the word used here, and this is what Eric was mentioning, when we look at pater, that's the Greek interpretation of the word that Jesus and his disciples would have used, which is, well, his disciples may have been a little bit shocked about it, but they spoke in Aramaic to each other. And so the word pater is a Greek understanding of father, but Jesus used the word Abba. Now there's debate. Normally, those of us who know about this word, we say, oh, it's like daddy. Maybe, but the point of it is that it is a familiar term, okay? Daddy does represent that because it's a little bit more diminutive. It's a little bit more like, like I don't think Eric is going to refer to Daniel as daddy, right? That might be weird, maybe like, yeah. So, but Liza would, because Liza relates to her father in such a way that she would say daddy. And you notice that when your kids age, they always drop those Y's off of the address, right? Mommy goes to mom, daddy goes to dad. And so and Daniel has mentioned that when one of his sons teenage sons has used daddy, it's sort of like oh, I'm still that person. So when we say that Abba means daddy, what we really want to emphasize is not so much the word as much as the idea of that intimacy. that you are so close with God and God is so close with you that you can use a familiar word of, and not so formal, not so much like, the father of the household must be respected at all times and obeyed. That Abba gets us at the real deep, ground level, intimate, snuggle up, having a bad day, crawl into the lap of, get some baked cookies, tears are wiped away, wounds are kissed kind of imagery. Okay, that both moms and dads do. All right. So you want to get at that intimacy. And the crowd would have been pretty surprised to hear Jesus refer to God in such a way. All right. So I just want to look, I'm looking at the time. I just want to see if there's anything else that I want to share real quick. Hold on a second, I see you. So yeah, so what we want to do is, I want to make sure though that as we're talking about Jesus using a pretty kind of surprising word, that it's not in antagonism to the First Testament. Okay, oftentimes in Christianity, we tend to emphasize how much Israel got wrong and how much the church is getting right because of Jesus, or how Jesus was in disagreement with the First Testament. And I think what we really need to do is when Jesus used Abba, he got at the heart of the law. He got at the heart of the relationship between God and Israel, because God has always been intimate with God's people. Okay, always present. Maybe there was restriction in regards who could go into the Holy of Holies, but God was present in the tent. God was present in the tabernacle. God led by fire. God led by cloud. God was in the temple. God was on the backside of a mountain. God has always been present with God's people. So we don't want to look at Jesus doing something new, but really when he says that word Abba, it's getting at the heart of the relationship that God has with God's people, even if we might be convinced, or Israel was convinced, that it was something different. Okay? So I'm going to stop teaching there. We will come back to look at the Our Father kind of impact, and also to the in heaven part. See, I told you we wouldn't get all the way through. But Eric patiently has his hand up, so I'm going to.
So I'm thinking, I'm thinking about the English language.
Yes.
If I want a familiar ancestral term,
Yeah.
or an overlooking guiding term,
Yes.
that term really doesn't exist in the English language. If I go back 2,000 years to Aramaic, the odds are that they had even less of a term like that other than Abba.
Right.
And so they had no other word that they could use, which doesn't quite fit the situation they wanted to describe.
Yeah. Yeah, we do have a very, we have to remember how our language develops and where it comes out of, and our definitions for words. So what I want to encourage you to do as we go through this, as you make this poem your own, find a word that fits there, that gets at that relational component, because that's really what's being stressed here. And we'll get more into that as we keep going through this line.
One of the things our native cultures tend to use is uncle or auntie or granny.
Yeah.
Or something.
Yep.
But it's that physical connection.
Yes.
That commonality.
Yeah. Yeah. And so we want to find those words. And so, yeah, that's why I like elder brother. We prayed that in the Indigenous Peoples Day prayer. Elder brother, our great ancestor. We can start thinking in those terms way more than we do, because especially in our culture, father has a specific image, and that is often head of the house, the one who's emotionally distant, the one who, and it's unfair to always put that in that direction. But that is how we see it. And so when we say father, we will conjure up all that baggage of definition. Okay, because we're not, as Eric pointed out, our cultural reference to father is a totally different relationship than what was going on with the Israelites and Abba. Okay, so anyway, before I round out, we did some Greek today. We talked about pater hemon, that's it. We can pick up next Sunday because I'm not in any rush. And are there any questions, or before I shut us down and go get ready for church?
Is there also an Aramaic version of this book?
Yes, I don't have it. There is an Aramaic version, and I will see if I can locate it online. I have a friend I can talk to who's a scholar in New Testament studies, and so he may have access. So I'll see if he can get me a good version. So the reason why I haven't presented it is that I am not an Aramaic scholar, and I'm not a biblical studies scholar per se. So let me go to the people who I trust and see if I can get one. And then
I'd be interested.
I'll get it into the slides. I'll
Okay.
get it into the slides, okay? All right. Anything else? Who here thought I was gonna get through the whole line? I was a little bit hopeful, but then I realized, wow, I have a lot of information here. All right, well, Dee Dee is logging on, so everyone can say hi to Dee Dee. And I'm gonna go get ready. And I'm gonna bring my pointer with me. Oh, Dee Dee's gone. Okay, but I don't want you pointing it at people. Can I trust you? Okay, you wanna stop recording? All right, guys, see you in a different form.